Ardell, the city of those who dream of success, the city of pleasures and gambling. This backwater alley is especially famous for this. This girl spends almost every evening here. You could say that she is here more often than at home. Today is another day when she won a big sum. The lady takes advantage of the fact that players want to outplay her, and in the end, they lose everything again. She has so much experience that even if they all play against her and try to outwit her, they still won't succeed. She is the strongest here. Nothing foreshadowed trouble. Everyone was about to leave when suddenly the door opened and a police representative entered. He announced that they were all arrested on charges of illegal gambling. Those 4 men were tied up right away, but the girl managed to run away from the table because she wasn't going to go to jail. She turned on her acting. She already has a legend to get out of the water dry, which she prepared in advance for such cases. The girl quickly tidied herself up, braided her hair, tied a bow, and pretended to be an innocent lady who had nothing to do with it. While everyone was looking for evidence in a bag of money, she had already hidden it under her clothes and approached this guy herself to deceive him. She asked what is going on here and explains that she came here to look for her brother in order to remove unnecessary suspicions from herself. The guy asks if her brother was in this game, to which she says that it seems not. She lost him, and so she followed a person who looked like him, but it turned out to be a stranger who was going to this place. She let out fake tears, said that she was going to leave here, and did not think that having nothing to do with these games, she would find herself in such a situation. After that, she began to speak in a trembling voice so that he could see how scared she was of them. He asked her not to cry because since she didn't play these games and just ended up here by accident, there's nothing to be afraid of, which means he believed her. So the commander let her go, asked her only not to cry and not to waste time looking for her brother, and if she wanted to report missing, she could contact them for help, and that was how they said goodbye. That's how she managed to calmly walk away from the crime scene in a matter of minutes, shedding only one tear. And as for her as a person, she is a swindler. Roland, full name, Sylvia Roland, age 24 years. She loves money so much that she is willing to sacrifice her own heart for it. So as strange as it may sound, she even likes this rotten city of pleasures, Ardell. Because even people like her who came from the streets can easily rake in money with a shovel. The main thing is just not to be afraid and to be cunning. Sylvia can be described as a dirty swindler and gambler. It is literally her lifestyle. Initially, the girl did not just start doing this. It was a forced decision and the only way to feed the newborn Chalk. And even though he doesn't listen to her at all, and even though they don't have a drop of common blood, the girl considers him her younger brother. Every day she is indignant at him so that he does not waste his young years in studies because she will not be able to provide for him all his life. And sooner or later, he will have to get by on his own. Mel tells her that he is not a little boy anymore and understands everything. But he has a question about how someone who barely goes to school for ordinary people can become a knight, especially since there are things in this world that cannot be achieved by efforts alone. The sister thought about his words, and without thinking for long, she had what she thought was a brilliant idea. She offers him to buy some status, and at first he didn't understand what it meant, so she started with that she heard that about 200,000 gold pieces should be enough for this. A couple more big deals, and it will no longer be a fantastic dream. And after that, she asked him what he thought. Would she be able to earn that much? He happily replied that of course he believed in her, and in return his sister asked him to train hard with the sword. Literally an hour later, Sylvia found herself in the scammer's haven, Rudante, where she visits about a couple of times a week. Here you can ask for some tasks and earn money on it, and these tasks are given out by the head of the Rudante, Hector. The girl came to him with a specific request. It was a matter of 100,000 gold, and he immediately had a question for her. When did she manage to go crazy? She tells him that she is fine, and he looks at her and tells her that she is very lucky because he has just what she needs. There is a very, very important person in Ardell right now. His name is Duke Maramonte. He is a war hero who is so famous as a knight that he is more often called Sir Santarii. There are shameful rumors that he destroyed his brother to inherit the title, but people are afraid to even discuss it. Sylvia was upset at first and said it was irrelevant, but then she realized it wasn't that complicated, because luring gentlemen to the gambling table is precisely her specialty, in which she will feel like a fish in water. She will pretend to be the ignorant daughter of a village baron, and she is doing just fine with acting. The girl hasn't played big for a long time, so it's time to prove herself and get out of her comfort zone, because this is the only way to grow and become better. Duke Miramonte will be on the top floor of the building. She already knew this before she showed up here. The girl just went up to the top floor, saw in front of her a man who charms anyone who looks in his direction, especially girls. Sylvia had of course heard that he was a handsome young man, but she didn't think that by looking at him, her legs would tremble and all thoughts would fly out of her head. Since there was no one else there, the guy thought she had some business with him, so he asked how he could help. She was warned in advance that he was very suspicious, so everything could be more complicated than it seems at first glance. He already looks at her as if he knows that she came for a reason, as if he read her thoughts. A very awkward moment came. He came closer and asked him to raise his head, without even finding out who she was and why she came. The girl was a little scared because she didn't think he would show interest in her so quickly. It definitely means something. Out of nowhere, some girl runs up to her, and this is just reinforcement, or you could say a support group. Sylvia knew that there would be such people. She just didn't think that one of them would appear right now. Hector knew it wouldn't be easy for her, so he sent his men. This lady's name is Veronica. She's trying to distract the guy's attention so that Sylvia doesn't have to answer awkward questions. The girl began to apologize for her supposed friend, and also said that she was her great-uncle's niece, who still had little understanding of social life. Meanwhile, Sylvia asked Veronica if she forgot by any chance how she promised to play Recap. Right after that, she started asking the guy if he had heard anything about it, and if so, she started asking him to become her teacher instead of Veronica. She miraculously managed to persuade him. The guy didn't even resist, as if it was his weak spot. The girl lured him into a game where literally everyone except him is not a random person. They are all bribe players. They will deliberately constantly raise the stakes. At one point, Veronica suggests playing for high stakes, and the Duke asks if Sylvia just said she doesn't know how to play that game. The girl immediately said that if beginners are lucky, then she would like to check it out, especially since she doesn't see the point in playing for fun because no one else will be interested in it. To make it as believable as possible, they had to play along with the Duke several times to encourage him, because if she had won the first time, there would have been questions for her. One of the players even started to praise him and admire him, but for some reason the guy remained emotionless and suddenly said that she had had enough. Also, in case they ever play together again, I first asked the girl not to tap her heels. After this request, everyone became tense, but he didn't stop there. The guy asked one guy to go get some water and another to fix his shorts. It just so happens that he only points at the scammers, as if he knows everything. It's strange that since he already figured everything out, he doesn't talk about it directly, as if he had some other goal. Or he just has a disgusting character, which explains everything. That's not all. He looked at her and said that she plays worse than he thought, to which she told him that in fact she is not used to it yet, and if he forgot, then this is her first game. Sylvia was a little offended by him, but after that the Duke for some reason began to offer to give her a private lesson, which sounds very tempting and at the same time suspicious. She has no idea where he's taking her and what benefit he has in teaching someone the game, because the fewer people who know how to play, the more likely he is to win them. Everything is very confusing, but he didn't scare her with this. The girl agreed and said that she would be happy to be his student. She has only one condition: to stop this boring game and instead give preference to something else. She suggests playing Shakaspel. He quickly agreed, which means that board games for him are more than just a way to relax and have fun. They are already sitting opposite each other, and she still feels that he is not as calm and simple as he seems. He also looks at her as if he sees right through her, and this makes her nervous. The girl doesn't feel confident near him. She is afraid of being embarrassed, and she also has a feeling that he has seen her somewhere before, and she may not even know about it. It could have been when she was running away from the crime scene a couple of days ago, when she was talking to the commander. The girl didn't remain silent. She asked him if he saw her when she cheated, because it could explain a lot. He says that's true. He saw her somewhere last week and guesses that today she is also doing something like that. Maybe even right now. She says that not at all. He understood everything wrong, but for him, her words mean nothing now because it is clear what criminal would admit that he is currently on duty? After that, he asked how old she was. She answered 24. But she didn't understand why he needed such information. The Duke quietly said that someone like her would do, after which the lady asked what she would do and how to understand that. And then a proposal was made that she should put something on this game. And if she won, then he would give her everything she wanted. Sylvia asked what will happen if she loses, that for this she will have to work for him for at least 2 years. The lady agrees. They decided to discuss the details after the game, and now she thinks to herself that 100,000 gold is already in her pocket. She considered him not a very smart duke, because with such skills, challenging a swindler was very risky. She has been playing these games for so many years that she can't even imagine a situation in which she could lose to someone. But just 10 minutes later, something happened that seemed impossible to her. The guy says that although he is playing this game for the first time, everything here is based on tactics, so it was easy as pie. Shaka Spell, a type of strategy game based on the glorious 10-year war, each unit and general has different abilities. Victory is achieved either by scoring 100 points through tactics or by destroying the king, so it is considered the game that best recreates war. This guy was a master of war, so it's no surprise he used formations that players don't use. And then the girl asks what he wants from her, to which he says that he is interested in a marriage contract. He needs a fictitious wife. She doesn't have to love him or please him in anything. She just needs to sign the appropriate document. At first she thought she had misheard, and he couldn't have suggested such a thing. But he repeated it again, and now she's in a stupor. What interests her most is why her, because a man like him could easily find a fictitious wife. Literally, any girl would not mind agreeing to such conditions. And then she asked if that meant that a regular, fictitious wife wouldn't suit him, because judging by the way he put her through all these tests, he didn't let her finish and said that she understood everything correctly. He needed her special opinion, fraud, and the immediate object of the fraud, the king of this country, with whom, as it seems to him, she must cope. He is not going to explain anything. He just asks if she can handle it or not because he does not like to spend a lot of time on something that can be solved in a short time. On the very day he saw her through the window, his assistant came to him with a letter he was not expecting. To my dear Dionel Santac del Casa Miramonte, from King Javier. Del, how are you? My heart aches to think how much you miss me in a foreign land. Do you have any idea why I sent such a busy man like you to Ardel? Because there are many beauties in Ardel, who knows? Maybe there will be a woman there who can melt your heart. I cannot sleep, worrying about what will happen to the Miramonte estate if you, without an heir, die wandering the battlefields. You know that your ducal title has not yet received my approval. In other words, don't even think about setting foot on the threshold of Vaca until you find a bride in Ardel. I hope you understand me. Get married soon, from your master who cherishes and loves you, Javier. The guy read the last word and immediately crumpled the letter into a ball, and the assistant looks at this in bewilderment because he can't imagine what could have spoiled the gentleman's mood so much. The boy regretted opening the letter. Although nothing would have changed, the king would never calm down until he attended his wedding. That evening, he couldn't find a place for himself. He couldn't imagine how to make the king leave him alone and understand that his personal life was no one's business, not even the king's. He looked out the window for a long time, trying to think of something, but he couldn't think of anything better than to arrange a fake wedding. Now the girl understood what was going on. Surprisingly, she seemed to be going to refuse. Everything is very simple. For her, it is interesting and a good opportunity to earn money to cover all her problems. Only she immediately warned him that she doesn't work for free, and then he has a counter question. Didn't she just lose, or is he misunderstanding something? Sylvia tells him that she said she would work, but she didn't say it was for free. The girl boldly named the sum of 100,000 gold. She thought that it would be enough, and he immediately asked if she was in her right mind. Had to explain that she raised the price because it was a scam in which she was risking her face. The guy had a new question. Isn't scams always like that? And then offered only 50,000. She tries to make it clear that this is something completely different. She will have to play one role for several years, and her face will become known throughout the capital. Besides, since she will play the role of the Duke's wife, her chances of getting married in the future are 0, so the very minimum she is willing to agree to is 90,000, no less. The Duke continues to bargain. He says that he will find a candidate for a wife at any moment without her, and after that, he offers 60,000. Sylvia doesn't quite understand what he's saying, because he himself said that he noticed her yesterday, and in this case, it would be difficult for him to find a better swindler than her. It is clear that he has fewer and fewer arguments. It is very difficult to negotiate with her. She thinks only of herself and does not let him feel like he is the main one here. After thinking for a bit, he named the sum of 80,000 gold and also mentioned that the expenses for living in the castle were deductible. The girl agreed. She extended her hand to him with a smile. Because in a principle, everything suited her, the swindler initially did not hope that he would agree, so this outcome satisfied her. 80,000 is not a small amount of money, but it seems that it doesn't end there. She needs something else from him. Sylvia hints to him about some bonus, and he doesn't understand why he should give something like that at all and thinks that she wants too much for her work. She says that he apparently has no conscience because he himself said that the object of the scam is none other than His Majesty the King. The slightest mistake could cost her her head, so in case of success, he, naturally, must give her a bonus. The Duke is perplexed as to whether the money he promised her is not enough, to which she replies that of course not. And since she's risking her life, he has to add risk pay, and he covers his face with his hand and asks if she even understands who's sitting in front of her. He called himself the Sword of Villatan, after which he asked to remember this title, because it is used most often. The ducal house of Miramonte, like the Sword of the Villatan, which for generations has protected the royal family, is like a fortress of the capital, and since she will live in such a place, nothing will threaten her. Sylvia hints that she doesn't believe him without proof, and he's already starting to get tired of arguing with her and trying to prove something. She has an argument for this too. Her behavior is natural because they are at the negotiating table, and there is no point in remaining silent here. Now he realized that she was also a very good negotiator. If such skills of hers were ever needed, the guy would certainly turn to her. In the end, he agrees with her, but asks to remove the clause about expenses for the scam, since he has already deducted all the expenses for living in the ducal castle. The girl does not mind, but in the end, she called him as greedy as other rich people. After that, they moved on to signing the contract. She just put her signature. He almost laughed because instead of a normal signature, she had a little rabbit. Then she teased him too, saying that he had an incredibly long signature, and then asked if he got tongue-tied when he said his name, to which he replied that this never happened. The Duke asked her to come closer, but said it in such a commanding tone that the girl simply asked why it was necessary. He started saying that he doesn't tolerate disobedience, but she's not one to give in to such manipulations, because soon she'll become his wife and she won't care about his title. Out of the blue, he grabs her hand, but still does it gently so as not to scare her. It happened so quickly that Sylvia didn't have time to understand anything, much less think about it, to start resisting. He literally pulled her to him so close that she had all sorts of emotions and thoughts about it. She asked what to understand by this, and at exactly the same second, someone unexpectedly and without warning bursts into the office. A very awkward situation has arisen. Sylvia has started to get nervous because she has no idea what they will think or have already thought. The Duke seemed to be deliberately saying all sorts of phrases so that everyone would think exactly what was not needed. He said that they had a very good time here. These three look at them as if they are already ashamed that they heard this. They do not move and do not even blink. Sylvia is so ashamed that she thought she should have asked for a bonus for his bad behavior, because if this situation happens again, she will just go crazy. The relationship between the Duke of Meramont and a mysterious woman in an elite gambling establishment in the center of the city's pleasures. Duke Miramonte falls in love at first sight with a lady of rare purity. No one expected this from him. It all happened so quickly that even the two of them weren't used to it, let alone other people. Other ladies were like this on this scandal. They lost the meaning of life and only said that if he doesn't get to one of them, then it's better for him to live alone all his life. After some time, they found out what others thought about it and read the news, which was full of rumors and only part of the truth. Some write that they have been together for a long time and only now decided to announce it. And some suggest that this is a sudden romance in which there is not a drop of seriousness and that everything will end very quickly as it began. Meanwhile, the guy puts a book on the table, which contains the entire history of the Marymount family, and Sylvia doesn't quite understand what's going on. The first thing she thought was that he wanted her to learn the names of the dukes who died 300 years ago, to which he said that it was not necessary to learn everything, but it was necessary to know at least the basics. She began to be indignant that he was not obliged to learn the history of her family, but it turns out that she was obliged, and it was unfair that he responded that she would still be given a new status. Marlene Sue Sinclair. These papers contain all the necessary information, so we are advised to study it properly so that he will not be ashamed of her later. Then he asked what about what they talked about last time, because a lot of time had passed and she had to please him. The girl learned the circumstances under which they met the Duke, and also briefly outlined the events and feelings that led to falling in love. And just in case, she made a list of specific people they were meeting with at the time. The girl wrote everything down based on scandals in the newspapers, so there shouldn't be any mistakes. But in the meantime, he's leafing through these papers. And after a couple of minutes, he said that he had already learned everything, and he managed to do it faster than she finished speaking. She even got up from the couch to ask him again if she understood him correctly, and he said that it was easy and reminded her that it was time for etiquette classes. The guy asked her to go somewhere, and she asks when he will check on her so that she knows in advance. In the end, they decided to go to the capital of Wahoo in 2 weeks. The girl had no idea until the very end what awaited her there, and was even afraid to ask in advance. Until then, she had to rush around in a hurry to perfectly transform into the future bride from Ardell. Meanwhile, she had only one question. Doesn't she look like a real aristocrat, and suggested to leave it at that? He tells her that they will continue until Madame Claire is completely satisfied, especially since it seems to him that it is not such a difficult matter to manage in this way, after which the woman also agreed with his words. Sylvia thinks that she has nothing left to learn, but everyone except her thinks differently, and they are also afraid of upsetting her, that in her case she will have to work much more than she can imagine. But so that the girl does not get upset ahead of time, they simply do not talk about it. Keller says outright that the lady has neither grace in her movements nor a strong foundation. She understands that the girl was not born into an aristocratic family, but this does not mean that etiquette is not for her. The two of them hint that since the girl has an opportunity, she needs to use it and learn, especially for free. Madame does not hide that she is going to completely change Sylvia's behavior as far as possible. For example, today they will learn how to bow for the royal family, to which the girl asked, "Didn't they learn it yesterday?" The woman explains that this was a bow for the king, and for the queen there is a separate bow, and it is also necessary to know. She is going to show how it looks from the outside and asks to remember and repeat, since it is not very difficult. The lady already starts dreaming of returning home. As soon as she thinks about it, she remembers her brother and the fact that there is no point in returning without money. Before that, she will have to try very hard after all. She has an opportunity to earn big money in a relatively easy way, so there is nothing to complain about for now. Half an hour passed. Finally, the girl heard the long-awaited phrase that the lesson can be finished for today, especially since she has a meeting with the lady and Veronica today, for which she needs to prepare. Madame Keller even deigned to praise her student. She said that she had worked hard today and asked her to please her with such successes every time. Sylvia is very happy to hear this, but now she is only interested in finally leaving here, and as quickly as possible. She said goodbye to them very quickly, so that they wouldn't suddenly change their minds and ask her to come back. At the very last moment, the guy managed to say that he allowed the meeting because Lady Veronica was with her at the time. The girl says that she understands and doesn't need someone to cover up her lies, to which he says that he'll believe that she won't be talking nonsense. Meanwhile, the girls have already met, but judging by Veronica's reaction, she is clearly unhappy with something and does not hide it. Coming closer, she asked if Sylvia had really fallen in love with the Duke, to which she had to answer that it was true. And then it started. Veronica asks if everything is all right with his head. She doesn't understand what's good about someone like Sylvia, who stabs you in the back and only does what she helps him with money. Sylvia asked her not to shout like that because someone might hear it. Veronica thinks that it doesn't matter whether it's real or not. But since the girl called, it means that she has some kind of request for her, and she wants to know what it is. Sylvia says that's right. While she's in his mansion in Vaha, Veronica will have to keep something with her. Hekanermarn. This is the key to their safe, and since the girl hands it over so easily, it means that she trusts her and she is not afraid that this could be a mistake. But the Duke did not ask her for anything like that, and if he needed to give the key to someone, he would have chosen the right person himself. Accordingly, this could mean that she is doing this without his knowledge. And in the meantime, she explains what needs to be done with it as soon as they leave. You need to pick up the key, turn it the other way, and under the bottom panel, inside there will be a bag of gold, which she will easily notice. In total, there will be a little more than 20,000 gold, which will be enough to buy a decent status. Since her brother Mel wants to become a knight, the girl hopes that Veronica will somehow help him with this. She promised to send the rest of the money later, and Veronica still asked how a guy could want something like that, but then she agreed anyway. Before saying goodbye, Sylvia decided to say goodbye one last time, because I think it definitely won't be superfluous. She asked him not to do anything stupid, blinded by jealousy, and not to reveal her true nature. If it becomes known that she is connected with the Rudant, it will not end well. She probably replied that she was smart enough to understand this anyway, and said that there was no need to remind her about it. She also wants to ask Sylvia to take care of herself and not worry about her brother because she will do it. Sylvia sees something strange in this. She even asked what this sickening concern was that came out of nowhere. Right after that, they started arguing and ended up fighting. And just at that moment, the etiquette teacher runs up to them to separate them. She asked to maintain decency. The girls somehow calmed down, but did not make peace. Veronica left in a carriage and Sylvia called her names the whole time she was going there. The girl thinks that now it's really time to leave Ardell. She can't believe that she's leaving the place where she's lived her whole life. And she also thought about the fact that in fact, this place is not much different from the alley where she lived. In such a large mansion, there is even a garden. Then she decided to calm down, started admiring the flowers, and realized that she had seen exactly the same one on the main street of Ardell. She had already begun to imagine how much money she could make if she sold such seedlings. They were probably much more expensive than other ordinary flowers. She was sitting quietly, not bothering anyone, and then some guy came up to her and said that she thought it was better not to touch it. Because it is a very rare flower called celery, which grows only in the north of Villatan, the Duke values it very much, so if she suddenly picks it, she will be punished. And then he remembered that he was a little late with the introduction and introduced himself as the Duke's bodyguard, and his name was Fernando. She didn't think that the Duke had his own bodyguard, because he looked like he didn't need such assistance, especially since he himself told her that he is the sword of the Villatan, and logically such people do not need protection. Well, or she does not understand something. He replied that unfortunately he doesn't help the Duke much. You could say he's more of a bodyguard for show, because such a high-ranking person as the Duke can't walk alone. After these words, she thought that this guy, like a puppy, is exactly Veronica's type. If they were introduced, it would be interesting, but it's strange that a girl thinks about this at her first meeting with a person. And then she thought that in a place where the only people there were a handful of maids, and Madame Keller supervising a mansion sounded somehow strange. This guy who introduced himself as a bodyguard is much more likely a spy who was sent by the Duke. And he could do it only for one reason. He doesn't trust Sylvia and wants to know what she does without his supervision. Even when the girl was in Rudant, she always conscientiously carried out the tasks assigned to her, no matter what. Even when things were so bad that she had to go hungry, she never once broke the game or extorted money by force, because that is the rule in this business. And he just like that, in one moment, trampled her trust as if he thought that swindlers have no pride at all. The guy noticed that she was looking at him for a very long time and was silent. So he asked what happened, and she replied that she was just curious about something. Sylvia asked him if he was from the South by any chance, and he was very surprised and asked how she knew that. The lady explained with a smile that his name was Fernando, and that he smelled like a southern breeze, and then she told me that she was from there too. In fact, it is not true. She said it because a common homeland easily destroys wariness towards a stranger. This rule works almost always. To keep the conversation going, he also said that she had a southern accent in her voice too. Only it sounded a little funny considering she had just lied to him and she wasn't from the South. The guy started asking where she was from specifically, if it wasn't a secret, and told him that he himself grew up in a town called Mostarika in the very south of Villatan, and then she told him that it just so happened that she was from there too. Only here you have to be careful because he might ask a test question and then you'll have to confess and tell the truth. She had to pretend that she was also very surprised. After that, she also said that she was very glad to meet you. Now even more so. You can see how embarrassed he was. It was as if he felt awkward, but she was glad that at least he wasn't strangling her with unnecessary questions. After that, she told him that if you think about it, she had left Mostarika a long time ago. This is the place where the Larancha fruits are very tasty. And then she thought about the calluses on his hands, judging by the way he blushes whenever a woman takes his hand. He's just a country boy. Nothing more. The more you look at him, the more he seems like easy prey for Veronica. But she thought about it too early. Meanwhile, he says that there are Laranca trees in the mansion's garden too. The guy suggested taking a look at them, and she reacted as if she didn't know this, although she had already seen them several times when she passed by. Since the girl wants to be alone, she started hinting that she would like to go there alone. And he says that the Duke is very worried about Lady Marlene's safety, so it would be better if they go together. Then she said directly that she wanted to immerse herself in thoughts about her homeland alone. And if he said anything about that, then they would simply have to say goodbye. In the end, they somehow agreed that he would not pursue her. Perhaps he just doesn't want to ruin their relationship with her. You can tell he's upset. Fernando probably wanted to take a walk with her, but now really isn't the time for that. Not only did he not say anything bad at the end, but he also promised not to tell the Duke anything so that she could walk around in peace and not be afraid of anything. Sylvia thanked him and said that he was very kind, and he asked to consider this act as an expression of neighborly solidarity. It turns out that it was not in vain that she deceived him. Supposedly, she came from the same city as he, but now her thoughts are not about this, but about how the Duke dares to introduce someone to her. Some time passed. The Duke noticed that Sylvia was nowhere to be found. Went outside, reached the garden, and heard as if someone was rummaging around in a tree. He asked her to get down immediately, although nothing like that was happening. She clearly would not break this huge branch, and nothing would happen if she ate a few fruits. She says that she wants to stay here and doesn't understand what the problem is, and also suggested that he join her because there is a very beautiful view from here. The guy reminded her that he hates and does not tolerate disobedience, so he hints that now she better listen to him. She asks, "Aren't these the words that only work in relationships based on mutual trust?" He grabs his head and says that he actually trusts her and doesn't understand why she even started talking about it. Since he didn't understand something, I had to ask another question. Does someone who trusts betray someone the way he does? It seems he didn't understand anything this time either. Moreover, he got so angry as if he was going to get her out of there himself. Then he realized what she was getting at and started explaining that Fernando was just reporting to him because he told him to. He was there to protect her. After that, she asked how much he was reporting to him, even what she did or said. Sylvia complained that she hates such things. No one warned her about it, so she thinks she has the right to ask that it does not happen again. He tries to explain that security is necessary, at least for her own safety. But even if that is the case, he could have talked to her about it and not just decide and monitor without her knowledge. To this, she has a question. Didn't he say before that there is nothing to worry about because he is the sword of Villatan? The Duke explains again that he is not doing this because he does not trust her, and then asked how important it was to her that he excluded all these reports about her actions, because before this he didn't think that it was such a big problem. She asked him to swear on his knightly honor that he will not receive reports on her, at least without her knowledge. He, without thinking for a second, replied that so be it. He swears on the honor of a blackmailer. The girl was happy, said that in principle she could forgive him, and after that he asked her to finally get off there. Sylvia doesn't even know what to say to him about this, so she starts by saying that when she played tag with His Excellency, she climbed higher than she thought, and he asked her to speak only to the point. So she had to admit that she probably wouldn't be able to get down, which meant that she needed someone's help with it. He suggests that she just jump and not think about the consequences because he thinks that he can catch her without any problems. Sylvia is worried that she might get hurt after all. The body is like capital for a swindler, and she also somehow doubts that he will catch her and everything will end as safely as he says. She tried to trust him, but warned him that if she did something wrong and broke even a nail, he would regret it, and she would remember the situation for a long time. The lady grabbed some thin stick, it immediately broke, and at that very second the thought appeared in her head that this was the end. The girl didn't think that she would make just the slightest move, and everything would turn out so badly that even the Duke got a little tense. Now all that remains is to hope for him, because she did everything she could, even if unsuccessfully. But she listened to him. Sylvia first prays that nothing happens to her, because if there is a serious injury, she will not survive it. She is very afraid of all this, so the fall felt longer to her than it actually was. As a result, they both fell to the floor. Oranges rained down on them from above, and one of them fell right on his head. It was a little painful and unpleasant, but it still turned out better than if he had done nothing at all. He asks if everything is okay with her, although he himself feels much worse than she does. Sylvia has already managed to get up, and he cannot open his second eye. She's already starting to worry about him, because it turns out that this is all because of her, and if she hadn't done anything out of spite, no one would have suffered. This was the first time she had been able to see him so closely, and she was lucky that he didn't notice. From this angle, he really is very handsome, as they say. Only if he smiled, it would be better. She feels awkward in front of him after all. She's been causing him too much trouble lately. Sylvia tried to apologize and thank him for his help, and she also didn't lie on him for long to somehow ease his pain. She also decided to praise him for his excellent reaction, but as for the strength of his hands, she remained silent. The Duke is very unhappy with himself, although he is pleased to hear this, but still, he imagined everything differently, and in the end, he suffered too. Out of the blue, he remembered her etiquette lessons and asked if she had finished them or not, to which she said that at that level she thought it would have been possible to finish them earlier. He said with a very cold look that in his opinion, she still needed a lot of lessons and that she had too high an opinion of herself. So much so that she did not see the real problems, and not only in terms of etiquette. He will personally ask Madame Keller to add a few more weeks of classes to her. Although in fact, this was discussed from the beginning, and thanks to this situation, he successfully reported it under the guise of punishment. She started to stop him to hear that it was a joke, and that he didn't mean it seriously because she just couldn't stand a few more etiquette lessons. Every time that woman talks to her, she feels prejudiced against herself, and there is no reason for it. From the beginning to the end of the lesson, she literally prays for time to go several times faster. She has a feeling that everyone around her is making fun of her and doing everything so that she doesn't get bored and doesn't relax. After all, the same etiquette lessons could have been conducted much more pleasantly, and the husband seemed to have specially chosen the person with whom to do some kind of punishment. Meanwhile, she tries to catch up with him to talk, and he constantly goes the other way. Only this time she is already tired of running after him. Sylvia grabbed his hand to keep him from going too far. She was no longer going to hold back and wanted to give free rein to her emotions. She wants to say that if she goes to Vaca, it is unknown when she will return, and she speaks loudly. That now she, Marlene Sue Sinclair, and she has no brother left in a back alley. The lady replied that that is why she says that to see him, so that no one will notice. The guy remembered that she once said that she had entrusted her brother to Lady Veronica, so he doesn't understand why she wants to see him in person. She tells him that of course it is necessary. He is her brother after all, and she doesn't see anything wrong with it. And he should also be grateful that she doesn't demand to see him every other day. Just a few times a month will be enough. The Duke asks where she gets so much love for her brother, because he personally has rarely heard of a brother and sister treating each other well, especially in adulthood. She tells him that this happens. And unlike him, she has never heard of any conflicts between relatives, especially ones so serious that they don't communicate, especially when someone is sick or when someone needs help. It turns out that literally every time they talk, they have some kind of disagreement, even out of the blue. The girl is already upset that he won't let her go, although it is very important to her, and she doesn't know how else to explain it. She was already thinking of leaving him to be offended, but he suddenly agreed and said that since she wanted it so much, she could go to her brother. And at first, she didn't even believe that he changed his mind so quickly. She probably wanted to thank him, but instead of a few words of praise first and also said, "A man said, a man did. Here is a man who is worthy of the title of Duke." It all sounded a little strange, but he pretended as if there was nothing wrong with it. Suddenly, the guy decided to upset her a little. Before it was too late, he warned that she would of course go to her brother, but Fernando would be with her, so he would feel calmer about her. She was of course indignant that because of them, she had no personal life and freedom, but then she thanked them anyway, because she realized that it was better this way than nothing at all. When the Duke had already left, Sylvia caught herself thinking that, in principle, he was not doing anything bad, so there was nothing to blame him for. He is not obliged to look after her, worry about her, take care of her, but he does all this, and she treated it as something self-evident. Some time passed, she already came with Fernando to her brother. Only the guy did not think that her relative lived here. She hasn't been here for a long time, so she's even a little embarrassed to come visit, and she's also afraid that the meeting won't be as colorful as she imagined. She asked Fernando to wait outside, and he said that the Duke actually ordered him not to leave her side for a single step. And she has an argument for this, that in fact this is an order from the future Duchess, and if he listens to her, then in the future she will also help him. He had no words for this. He simply remained silent and allowed her to go where she needed to go, because the offer was very tempting. Here she is already entering the house, calling her brother with a smile and waiting from him at least a smile or some words that he is glad to see her. It's clear that he hasn't done anything all day. He walks around the house with a pillow, and she understands him because he has nothing else to do. He didn't expect to see her today because she didn't even warn him. Although it was a really pleasant meeting for him, any person in his place would have reacted in exactly the same way. Then he realized that his beloved sister had come to visit him and immediately attacked her as if they hadn't seen each other for several years. Sylvia immediately asked if Veronica had come to see him by chance, and he said that she had already been to see him several times and everything was fine, and also said that Sister Veronica said that he entered the Villiton Royal Academy and said that if he graduated from it, he could become a knight. He replied that he was an ordinary guy and he wouldn't get into the Royal Academy. Then she said that there was some baron, apparently her distant relative, and that he could adopt him to get him in as an adopted son. Sylvia said that this was very good news and also advised him to trust Veronica because if she thought of something, then it would happen. And then she looked at his hair and noticed that it was not the same as it had been when she had last seen him. They have grown so much that it is time for him to get a haircut, because if she comes to him next time, they will be much longer and it will not look good, so it is better to do it soon. She said that if she herself forgot about it, so that he would remind Veronica about it, she should have just the free time for this, unlike her. Then she changed her mind about putting it off for later, asked him to sit down so she could give him a haircut right now so as not to bother anyone later. Moreover, since he is entering the Royal Academy, he must look appropriate, and she will be happy to help him with this. And it's also very nice to look after him, because it's unclear when they'll be able to see each other next time. She warned him in advance that it looked like she would have to leave town for a long time, but for some reason he thought that she had been caught cheating, and that was why she was leaving. The sister laughed and explained that it wasn't that, she just had a good job with very good pay, so she agreed. Then she asked him not to worry and just study, and also told him that as far as she knew, the Royal Academy should have a dormitory. So there is something to strive for, and he should remember what he can lose because of his own laziness. She also asked him not to be modest, so that all sorts of aristocrats would not make fun of him, so that she would not be ashamed of him. Then she realized that it was probably very unpleasant for him to hear this from her. So she changed and said that she hoped that he understood her. She just wanted the best for him and did not want to offend him at all. Meanwhile, she says that as soon as she finishes her business, she will come to him again and also promise to finish it quickly. Her brother asked her how long she was going away for and how far, but she couldn't even tell him the truth because she didn't really know anything yet. And she also doesn't want to upset him because most likely, in the end, everything will take much longer than she plans. Then he asked in a sad voice if it was because of him that she was accidentally straining herself so much and trying to squeeze the most out of herself. Sylvia asked him not to say that again and said that it was not like that at all, although in fact, that is how it is. It's very painful for her to look into the eyes of her brother, whom she has to deceive, but if it weren't for the financial problems, none of this would have happened. And they could spend much more time together, but due to all these circumstances, it is what it is. Sylvia hugged him and asked him to watch his diet and not to be picky about food after all she knows him. The guy promised that he would behave in such a way that she would be proud later and would not find out that he had done something. Meanwhile, the assistant opens the door and says that actually it's time for them to go back, and she replied that she was just about ready to go. The girl almost forgot to warn him that if someone unfamiliar came to him and asked about her, he should say that he didn't know anything. And of course, she asked him to take care of himself. It was a very hard farewell, although she smiled at him at the end. Inside, she felt exactly the same as he did, who does not hide it. Because if she showed her real emotions, it would be even harder for him to say goodbye to her. It's easy for me anyway. And then there's this knight who from the very beginning behaves as if he can't stand it, like a puppy who needs to go outside. He complained that she was actually late, and they had agreed that it would take less time, but she didn't respond to this and suggested that they go slowly. And she also said that although the journey from the mansion to this alley took almost half a day, the Duke was probably prepared for her to be late, although Fernando does not think so. Because from what he said before they left, if they were late, nothing good would come of it. Sylvia tries to calm him down. She doesn't care about it at all because she doesn't see the point in it. Even if something happens, she will still be able to explain everything to her husband and protect her assistant. As soon as she entered his office, a couple of minutes later, she was in a vertical position, upside down. It looks very strange from the outside, but the girl doesn't even resist, as if she doesn't mind him holding her like that. After some time, she finally asked him if this was revenge for yesterday's incident, because if it was so, then he could have said. At some point, a small emerald-colored stone fell out of it, and it looks like that's what he was after. Then even more small jewels started to fall out of it, for which she felt terribly ashamed. But it is still unclear how she got them. This means that he guessed about it, and specially turned his wife over to make sure of it, and to make her feel ashamed. You can't tell from her that she is experiencing any such feelings. She said with a smile that he has a sharp eye, and that until that moment she had never come across anyone like that, as if it was some kind of test. Immediately after that, he ordered her to leave quickly, and now the girl is already in the corridor. On the way, she met Fernando, and he asked where she is heading. She had to explain that the Duke called her, so she went to his office, and now she is free. The assistant suggested that she was being punished because of yesterday, to which she immediately replied that he was mistaken, and also noticed that something was wrong with his face. Then she just moved on and thought that next time she picked up some jewelry, she would have to be more careful. Meanwhile, today, finally, Sylvia finishes all her training in Ardella and goes to the capital of Bajaro. The lady enters the carriage and is glad that although the Duke shook everything out of it that he could, she still saved one stone, and now it is with her. She wanted this emerald the most, so she didn't just hide it under her clothes like all the others. And this decision turned out to be the right one. The girl had already stepped onto the threshold of the carriage, and then the Duke suddenly addressed her. Only this scared her a little. She didn't hear him approach, and because of the stress, she forgot the main rule that he was hinting to her about right now. I could have remembered earlier, but better late than never. A noble lady should always receive assistance when getting into a carriage. It is better to wait for someone than to get in yourself. Although he didn't say anything about it, everything became clear from his look, for which she was very grateful to him. At that moment, he asked her to bow her head. She had all sorts of thoughts. Sylvia has no idea what other mistake he found in her. But it turned out that he just wanted to take off her hair clip because, as he says, she looks better with her hair down. It was a very ambiguous gesture on his part. The lady was a little embarrassed, and not only she, even those who were watching from the side. The maid's cheeks turned red, and they were so embarrassed as if he had just said that to them and not to her. While from the outside it all looked very romantic and beautiful, only the two of them understood the essence of this gesture. So while they were near the carriage, they kept silent in order to sort it out later one-on-one. The guy asked her to come inside quickly, and she already understands that it's not about the beauty of her loose hair, but about what was on it. Sylvia thanked him politely, but inside she was already preparing for a conversation, so as not to remain silent and somehow justify herself. The carriage door closes, and then the most interesting part begins. He didn't even have time to say anything to her before she started to attack him. The lady is indignant. Why is he so mean, and how can he feel sorry for her? One or several pieces of jewelry because he is so rich? To which he replies that even though he has a huge fortune, This does not mean that she has the right to freely touch his things. Even if he had 1,000,000 of those stones, she would have to ask first, but under no circumstances would she steal them and think that it was okay. In the end, she agreed that she had done something a little wrong, promised that it would not happen again. But from his reaction, it was clear that until he was convinced of this, he would not believe these words. After all, this is being told to him by an active swindler, whose actions need to be monitored every second. As soon as he looked down, he immediately noticed another precious stone, and after that he had only one question for her. How after saying that this would never happen again, she didn't admit that at that moment she had a few more stones with her. It turns out that she wasn't honest enough, and now he has even less reason to trust her. He no longer cares whether she has forgotten about these stones or not. He will change his attitude towards her only after visible changes, no other way. Be that as it may, Sylvia can be as angry at him as she wants for anything. For her, he is still a handsome man who can be forgiven for everything. For her, he is not just a handsome guy. He is like from another planet. His appearance is literally the personification of something beautiful. She has never seen a more perfect face in her life. The sword of Villatan, Miramonte, the victor in all battles about whom legends are composed. But this man, unlike from her, he will not be able to enjoy life. He will die on the battlefield, all his life only fighting. With such appearance will have to survive all her life on the battlefield. And she, with her beautiful appearance, will have to survive all her life with the help of scams. He had noticed before, but today especially she looks at him as if she is in love and does not hide it. The Duke asks how long she will stare at him like that. But this question does not embarrass her at all, and he thought that she would now start to get embarrassed, to make excuses. But no. Then he thought that she was probably too bored, told her that there were some games under the table. She opened the top part and was surprised because if she had known about it earlier, they would not have wasted so much time. Sylvia invites him to play a game of Recap, and he asks if she didn't say she doesn't play games without benefit. The lady said with a smile that, of course, without benefit, nothing happens. She offered him to put up a decoration and see this fruit. The guy says that if she wanted to joke like that, then her jokes aren't funny, and advised her to learn how to do that when she has time. Right after that, he thought and offered to bet her his honesty, because this would be really interesting. For this, he would play even until the night to win and find out what it is like to be next to a person who cannot deceive. Sylvia says that she doesn't really lie in his presence anyway, but it just sounded more funny than serious. In the end, she agrees to his terms and demands that he agrees to her terms, because it will be fair. Judging by the condition of the cards, he apparently had never used a set like this. Sylvia decided to lay out the cards in a standard layout. If you only know the layout of the cards, you can easily shuffle them as needed, and no one will notice. She decided to give him the low cards and leave herself the high ones, and with such a smile that he would wonder where she had already managed to deceive him. Sylvia is confident that she has no chance of losing. She believes that she has complete control over the game and her opponent, so everything will go smoothly and to her advantage. It so happened that she ended up losing to him, although just a couple of minutes ago she was smiling as if this would never happen. She tries to figure out how he does it because he doesn't look like the kind of person who often does this. He says it's very simple. He just knew in advance that she was using tricks and didn't give in to anything. And he also really wanted to look into the eyes of the person who usually wins, and then suddenly he had to lose. These efforts were worth it. She was so upset, as if her whole future life depended on this game. In the end, instead of getting upset and blaming herself for a long time, Sylvia decided to talk to him about business. She suggests that they team up and explains that if they both clean out everyone, they can buy a whole country. At that moment, he puts down his cards and says that this is a useless conversation, but she still proves that he should listen to her, and if he listens, he won't regret it. After some time, the girl asks where they are now. A little more than noon has passed since departure, so they must be somewhere in the vicinity of business. She somehow guessed that they really were right here. This was the very city of clouds that was on the Ricotta map. After some time, they asked the coachman to speed up and finally arrived at the castle of Merrimont. She just got out of the carriage, immediately began to admire this place, like a little child in the Duke's. Unlike her, calmly, as if for him there was nothing special in this. Then he asked her to control herself so that he wouldn't be ashamed of her. only it sounded a little offensive. Here they are already entering the castle. Sylvia is angry with him, and he doesn't even look in her direction so that she doesn't think that he is so easy to manipulate. The doors open. The girl from the first seconds felt a pleasant atmosphere, which is very strong here, and at the same time, unobtrusive. She even felt much better. All the bad emotions disappeared by themselves, and the guy's face didn't change. They were met by all the servants who were not busy. The butler was the first to greet the distinguished guests and said that it was a great honor for them all to see them. Instead of also communicating with them politely, the guy was so brief that Sylvia even felt ashamed of him, because in his place she would have behaved differently. And then he says that he doesn't think the butler doesn't know the rumors from the Ardell, so he asked to prepare properly. The man promised to immediately prepare a room for his lordship, and it was also clear from his expression how unpleasant it was for him to be spoken to in such a way. He also quickly managed to make out the lady whom he was seeing for the first time. He immediately understood that this person was the very lady that everyone was talking about. He, like everyone else, could not help but notice her impeccable posture. She held her back with such proud straightness, and her gait was weightless and graceful, like the silent flap of a swan's wing. And as for her smile, you could talk about it forever. Out of the blue, the man takes the lady by the hands and starts thanking her, although the girl has no idea how to react to this because she doesn't even know his name. And then he says that if his lordship had remained a bachelor for the rest of his life, he would not have been able to leave in peace. But since the gentleman has a beloved woman, now he is calm about this. Sylvia somehow didn't expect to hear this from him, and now she understood why the Duke was so cold with him. Because if you start talking to this man, he will take advantage of it and will talk until he gets tired. Meanwhile, he had already led her into the room. The butler warned her that his lordship's bedroom was right across the street, so if something happened, she wouldn't have to go far. The butler thought that it would probably be wrong to prepare a common room for them, so he probably asked the maids to clean up the 2 rooms in advance, and that was the right decision. Because if she heard from him now that this was her common room with the Duke, she would want to fall through the ground, because this is unacceptable for her. She really loves space, and even being the Duke's bride, she would prefer to sleep separately. What can we say if she never even slept in the same room with her brother when they were offered to sleep in different beds? Meanwhile, the maids arrived to inform that His Excellency was asking to prepare for an audience with His Majesty. Sylvia didn't expect everything to happen so quickly, but since it is, there is no escape. She will have to hurry. She doesn't like that they make her work hard anymore. It's a little scary, but resisting isn't the best idea yet. The maids have already prepared the bath. They are helping her get rid of her clothes, but the problem is that before she did all this herself, at 24, she had never had to show her body to strangers, much less let them do basic things for her, such as taking a regular shower or bath. Now she thinks about how shameless the nobles are, how they show themselves to other people every day. She has to act as if everything is normal, but inside she is in complete denial. I want to tell them right now to get out of here, but I don't want them to think that she has a complex. She should be happy now, but everything is a little different. Only after a couple of minutes, when she had already gotten used to the situation, was she able to somehow relax, and the assistants, meanwhile, were surprised at how she took such good care of her body that she had very delicate skin. Then they saw a huge bruise on her leg and asked where she got hurt so they could talk about something. The lady said that as a child, she was often clumsy and fell all the time, so she has enough of these bruises all over her body. Suddenly, some assistant started thinking out loud and said that this scar was not from a fall, and only then realized that she didn't have to say that. Because even if the lady deceived them and hides the real reason for these bruises, it is none of their business. The maid is nervous. She's already afraid to hear some words, although she understands that if she is reprimanded, it will be justified. She tried to apologize for interfering without thinking, but Sylvia remained silent, as if she still didn't understand what she was apologizing for. The girl just thinks that this maid, apparently, was already accustomed to this. So she immediately realized that these were nothing more than traces of beatings. In the alley, if this happened, no one paid attention. But indeed, here, everything is completely different. So you have to be more careful. At some point, she told them that she could handle it herself now. They wished her a good evening and calmly left. After a while, they helped her dry her hair, choose a dress, and do light makeup so that she would be more confident. The Duke came up to the door, knocked and asked what they were doing there for so long. He was not used to waiting for someone, especially since a really long time had passed. Lucky that by this moment, she is already completely ready to go out and dazzle him with her beauty, which she herself is delighted with. Sylvia apologized for keeping him waiting. She understands that he is a very busy man, and every 10 minutes is important to him, but for the first time she expects forgiveness. He still talks to her as if she has done something wrong, although he should understand that in fact everything here is unusual for her, the environment, the people, the duties, and more. When she had no more arguments left, she started saying that he was too impatient and that she thought that people might be a little late while they were getting ready and that this was quite normal, especially since the contract didn't say that she had to respect his time. And then she changed the subject, asked how far it was to Castello Baja, to which he replied, a 5-minute carriage ride. The lady thought about the fact that they used to say that the Duke of Miramonte was a knight who protected the royal family, which meant that he was located close to the Castello so that in case of trouble, he could protect them. Before she had time to think about it, he gave her his hand and hinted that they should actually be on their way by now. Looking into those eyes, she of course didn't want to agree to this. In any other situation, she would have waited for at least some respect for herself in a normal tone. But the situation is special, and there is no time for this yet. And here it is, Castello Baja, a legendary place that really cannot be confused with anything else. This feeling, it is different from what arose from the castle of Maramont. It is overwhelming and even seems a little intrusive. Meanwhile, 2 guys approached them. It was probably one of the servants. They were most likely passing by and came to say hello. The Duke immediately showed that he had no time for this. It was very ugly on his part, but everyone had long been accustomed to such behavior. The girl is no longer surprised either. She has stopped being ashamed because she realized that everyone already knows him. And since he behaves like this, let it be his problem. Here they are already approaching the main entrance. They only need to take 1 step and the doors will open. Someone announces that Diner Sentak, Duke Mayra Monte de Casa, is entering, and at that moment Sylvia begins to get very worried. For some reason, he started supporting her by the shoulder. Although it is clear that this is only for the public, in ordinary life he would not have behaved like that. Then he wished her luck, and she smiled and told him the same thing, as if she thought he needed luck more than she did today. As soon as they had already approached His Majesty, the Duke asked how he had been chewing all this time, as a sign of respect. And at that moment the lady remembers the etiquette lesson, where she learned that noble gentlemen of lower rank do not dare to look at the radiance of His Majesty. This can only be done if he himself asks her to do so. Meanwhile, the man says that everything was fine at home, and then asks, what about the situation in Ardell? The Duke says that the southern front was in a healing state, so it took 4 days to restore it properly. His Majesty got a little angry because he actually meant the women there, and the guy started for some military matters. The Duke looked away. It was clear that this was an unwanted topic for him and that he had no idea how to get out of this conversation and do it politely. His Majesty is already looking at him as if the guy has done something wrong, although in fact he simply misunderstood the question. And then the man gets up from his seat and says, really? He just understood everything correctly, and some people are just embarrassed to admit it, that the rumor that everyone is talking about is true. And meanwhile, at that moment, Sylvia had already tensed up. She seemed to feel that these words could somehow be connected to her. Now His Majesty wants to hear the answer to just one question. Is it true that the Duke fell in love with a lady in Ardell? He also asked this with a smile, as if he wants to hear a positive answer, and if he hears it, he will be very happy. The Duke replied with a displeased face that the rumor was true, and this made His Majesty's smile widen even more. And then the question started, what city is she from? He heard something that the daughters of Count Ardell are beautiful, to which the guy said that she is Sinclair's daughter. When the man started asking if it was really somewhere out there in the backwoods of the South, Sylvia wanted to sink into the ground because she had never been so ashamed before. That's what it means when people associate some estate with something bad. And then she heard words that she didn't even hope for. That what difference does it make where the girl is from? The main thing is that she is a good person. And then the lady realizes that the Duke seems to be deliberately ignoring her. He could have said many times that she is his chosen one, but for some reason he doesn't do it. After some time, His Majesty could no longer restrain himself and asked directly where this lady was. And after that, Sylvia decided to take a risk. She immediately drew attention to herself to announce that she was the very girl they had just been discussing. She apologized if it was wrong to intervene in the conversation, hoping that he would understand her and be glad to have this information. And now it seems the most interesting part begins. Now she will either be very lucky and everything will end well, or it will immediately become clear that her words were unnecessary. His Majesty begins to evaluate her. He says that her face seems pretty, but her height, in his opinion, is a bit short. All this sounded quite acceptable. But then he called her a rabbit, and that was already unpleasant. She began to think to herself that if he was a king, it didn't mean he could not control his words because he had just offended her greatly. Suddenly, the Duke unexpectedly stood up for her. He says that she is the person who will become the Duchess, so he asked the king to refrain from words that could hurt her. His Majesty looked away thoughtfully, as if he didn't care about these words and was too lazy to explain that, in fact, in the entire kingdom there wasn't a single person to whom he would seriously listen and to whom he would apologize for his words. And then he thought of something to say again, namely that he had never doubted him before, not a single day. That he, while still a young duke, would become the great hope of Alaton, and he proved this by winning a great victory in the War of Bellium. But if there is one reason why he does not believe him, it concerns this girl. After which the question was asked whether a person who has experienced such disasters can let anyone into his life. He knows that it was his stubbornness that made him bring the bride from Ardell. But it would have been good if he had just tried. But it sounded somehow ambiguous. It seems that the king does not quite believe that a guy can choose a girl like Sylvia for himself. He even got really angry about it. The king asks if the guy really wants him to start showing hostility towards him, and he replies that it is not a lie, and asks him not to raise his voice at him. His Majesty literally does not listen to what is said to him. He continues to say that it is not appropriate for him at such an age to discuss such a thing as true love. And he also said that in order to deceive him, the guy had to be more careful since he suspects that they are not together for real, but only because one of them needs it. Otherwise, how could the daughter of a backwater aristocrat charm the duke of an entire country? He knows perfectly well that someone like her, the daughter of a powerless aristocrat, can be easily used. He has no reason to believe these two people. He says it outright and demands an explanation. Sylvia thought that after all, the king is also a man. He is not some mythical creature. And this means that he can be easily deceived, thereby helping the Duke and showing that she is on his side in any situation and can be counted on. As soon as she decided to act, she started crying and, of course, attracted even more attention to herself. It looks very natural, as if she had trained for a long time before and was even able to make her face turn red. These two are confused about what is happening to her. They very rarely see anyone cry, especially a girl. The Duke was not ready for this either. He does not understand what it means and is afraid that she will make things worse. She was asked what happened, to which she replied that her low status had forced the Duke to go through such humiliation, and she felt guilty. After that, she asked him a question. Is it really true that just because she's the daughter of a low-ranking aristocrat, her love with the Duke is not trustworthy? It did not sound against. The main thing is that it would be useful. Not much time passed, and now the king is already getting up from his seat to say that he got angry and said words that hurt her, and now he is ashamed of it. She says that she just wanted to show His Majesty her happy face and came here with a trembling heart, preening herself. But she didn't think that she would be greeted here like this. She is trying to put pressure on him to cause even more self-pity and shame in the king. At some point, she got tired of playing the crying princess. She no longer has enough acting skills, so if someone reacts to this faster, it would be nice. And then the Duke decided to support her. He came up and very gently began to stroke her head, and also asked her not to cry, saying that he could not watch his beloved suffer. After this, the king definitely had no questions left. He believes in their love. He just started hinting that they should stop hugging because it's not very nice to watch from the outside. He, of course, understands that they probably have some feelings. They don't care, but personally for him, as a stranger, it's unpleasant. The lovers did not understand the hints, so His Majesty suggested that the lady go for a walk in the garden to calm down, especially since he needed to talk about business alone, and after some time they would all get together again. She agreed, and when her assistant approached her to take her into the garden, she had to continue acting further in order to play the role to the end. If she had changed abruptly and the assistant had noticed it, she would have definitely told the king about it, and then everything would have been in vain. She was mostly alone in the garden, and only occasionally someone would come up. And now these two maids noticed that the lady's eyes were swollen and offered to prepare something cold for her eyes, but she refused. Sylvia didn't hesitate to say that she wanted to be alone because they didn't see anything wrong with it. It was so nice here that she would have sat here until the very night. She even wanted the conversation between the king and the duke to last longer so that no one would disturb her for as long as possible. Now the girl understands why some people like to be alone in such places. The nature here is really relaxing. If she had stayed inside, she wouldn't be feeling so good now. To make sure everything goes well, she even tries to pretend here as if she is trying to calm down. But she really didn't think that because of this, someone would approach her here. Someone asked why she was crying, but she didn't see anyone and was very scared because it could be someone else, or, for example, thieves. A couple of seconds later, a guy came up to her, whom she saw for the first time. But due to stress, she didn't immediately manage to see his face. Even if you look at him from afar, he still has a very handsome appearance that immediately catches your eye. He offers her to use a handkerchief so as not to stain the sleeves of her dress, and she looks at him as if he is speaking to her in another language. Only now did she realize that, judging by her hair, it was golden and shimmering beautifully in the light. Anyone would immediately understand that this was none other than the Prince of the Wall. She even felt embarrassed that she did not recognize him. Meanwhile, the Duke listens to lectures from the king. For him, this is a usual thing, so he is used to it. The king says that, to be honest, the guy is really bothering him, and he says that he admits it and is not even going to argue. His Majesty is most interested in why the guy brought this young lady here and what he is trying to achieve. The Duke repeated that the rumors were true, and the man asked not to say this because he could no longer bear to hear it. Meanwhile, he suggested not to waste time and said outright that he had 3 theories regarding this. First, that he and the lady had conspired to frame and slander the king in some way. But she had such a sad, tear-stained face, and she doesn't look angry, so he immediately discards this assumption. Secondly, he most likely charmed and is now playing with this young and innocent lady. Given his personality, this is the most likely assumption. Well, and thirdly, he really did fall in love with this lady. Only he believes in this the least. And when he said in front of her that he believed them, it was so that she wouldn't start crying even harder. Moreover, the man knows very well about the deep aversion to the Duke's love, so the third option can be excluded as safely as the first. The guy says he is very wrong because he doesn't hate love itself, he hates himself. It sounded so unexpected that His Majesty even thought for a moment, suddenly all this is true, and he is really sincere now. Meanwhile, Sylvia remembers another etiquette lesson when a woman said that greetings to the crown prince and the prince are different. If she confuses them, she will become a laughing stock in the aristocratic society of this city. And since the girl has no idea whether he is the crown prince or just a prince, I had to clarify this right away. After this question, he laughed so hard that she immediately felt ashamed, as if she had pronounced his name incorrectly. She even perceived him as a crazy person, because his reaction was completely inexplicable. Finally, the guy said that he was just a prince, even so that she wouldn't get confused next time. He said that he, the crown prince, had red hair, and his was golden. He also realized that since she was confusing them, it meant that the girl was clearly not from around here. She smiled slightly and said that she came here from Ardell, but she doesn't plan to stay here for long, and it doesn't depend on her. And then he says that he has a friend in Ardell. This girl's name is Veronica, and of course, Sylvia immediately remembered that very Veronica that she knows. He saw that her gaze immediately changed when he said this name and asked if she really had a friend there named Veronica. Meanwhile, he reminded that she actually didn't answer his question when he asked why she was crying here. The girl replied that it was generally not appropriate to ask about the personal life of a lady he was seeing for the first time in his life. He didn't expect to hear this from her. He thought that she would tell him about all the details, for example, who offended her and how long she had been sitting here. But no. Out of the blue, the guy comes closer to her, starts looking at her with such a look as if it is not she who is standing in front of him, but a person who looks exactly like him. Then he grabbed her hands very hard, and this was already starting to make her very wary. Really, very. She has no idea what kind of person he is and what to expect from him. So such actions give rise to all sorts of thoughts. After all, if he wanted to tell her something good, he wouldn't look at her like that, as if he had just caught his enemy or some kind of spy. Just when she just started watching him and not panicking so as not to make things worse, the Duke came up just in time. He didn't understand what was going on here. So he took the guy's hands away from his girlfriend and made it clear that he wanted an explanation. And if they are not there now, then he himself will grab him by the hands and will look as intently as he just did. They hadn't seen each other for a long time, but he recognized him immediately, and of course, immediately stopped being the same as he had been a couple of minutes ago. Then he explained that the girl simply reminded him of someone he knew before, and she said that she forgave him and suggested that he simply forget this awkward situation forever. Meanwhile, the Duke asks how the lady feels, because he imagines what it was like for her when a strange guy grabs her hands and there is no one around. The Crown Prince looks at them very carefully as if he is trying to understand something. He did not succeed, so the guy just asked, what kind of relationship is between them? Because if he understands everything correctly, then they started it just recently. The Duke introduced her as his future wife, and for the first time did it with a slight smile, as if he was proud of it. If Sylvia had seen it, she would have been very surprised. Even though the guy tried to act as if he didn't care, the girl still noticed how strangely he reacted to the Duke's words. Finally, the prince said goodbye politely, wished them all the best, and said that he hoped they would see each other soon. He left with such a smile, as if he was truly happy for them. But the lady felt something completely different. She feels very awkward, even though she didn't do anything, but the unpleasant aftertaste still remains. And when she became interested in asking what kind of relationship they had, the guy left and only hinted that they didn't like each other, although you couldn't tell from the outside. After that, she asked him how tired he was that day, and he didn't answer. Although judging by the silence, everything was clear anyway. He simply made it clear that he didn't want to talk now. After all, talking to the king was very exhausting, and he didn't want to take out his anger on her. Sylvia has no idea what to do now. When she is silent, she feels uncomfortable, and when she speaks, she is afraid that she might say something unnecessary. She most often does not understand how to behave with this person so that he is happy, but then she understands that no matter what she does, he will still be unhappy. She is very rarely lucky that he is in a good mood and doesn't get irritated by every word she says, but it happens. They have already come a long way. It is as if he deliberately chose the longest road. Only since he says that he is tired, it is somehow illogical. Meanwhile, they remember that they have a small problem. They somehow forgot to call a carriage, so the girl offers to solve the situation. Only she needs money from him. She will be able to quickly get to Castello Baja and bring a carriage from there. He didn't expect such a proposal from her at all. Not at all, because he was usually used to solving such problems on his own. The guy can't imagine how she'll do it, especially since it's already late, and she might be simply scared to move around at night. In the end, as usual, she managed to persuade him. Although the guy was unhappy, he still gave her money. He is so tired that he doesn't care about anything or anyone anymore, especially since she herself suggested it. Then why not? She put the money in her pocket and promised to return soon, although she has no idea how long it will take. Strangely, he smiled when she left. He was apparently pleased that she decided to be useful, especially when it was really needed. Now all he can do is look at this beautiful view and wait for the carriage she promised, unless, of course, there are unforeseen circumstances. At some point, the girl realizes that she should have asked him for more money. Well, it's too late. Next time, she'll just remember this situation and won't make such a mistake. Meanwhile, she meets an assistant who says that he was waiting for her, but she was thinking about something and even forgot to say hello to him. He says that he thought the servant would come for the carriage they left behind and asked why she came for it herself, to which the lady replies that she just came to stretch her legs, and she wonders why he is personally waiting for the Duke's servant. He also said that giving such an order to the future Duchess was somehow wrong. Supposedly someone else should do it, but definitely not her. He apparently wanted to cheer her up. say something nice, but he didn't succeed. He started behaving strangely again, took her hand, and she remembered that situation and tensed up again. Because this time the Duke was definitely not there. It was unlikely that he was following her and would be able to help suddenly. The guy offers to take her there, but she thanks him for the offer and says that she will go herself after all. In the meantime, they still agreed that they would walk together, and Sylvia was thinking the whole way about what he wanted from her because obviously he wouldn't pay so much attention to her just like that. In this city, no one does anything for no reason. There must be some explanation for this, but so far, she has no idea. They were passing by a beautiful view, stopped, and he liked to watch how she reacted to it because he was used to it. But for her, it was something new. Kidwada bahom. Meanwhile, Sylvia feels a little awkward because she promised to come back soon. But in the end, they are slowly walking with the prince, and she no longer knows how to act politely and correctly. Because if she makes the Duke wait too long, he will have questions and even more so. If he finds out why she was late, he will start to get angry and possibly jealous. At this point, she tells him that this view is simply incredible. But if she had only known what he would answer to this, she would have remained silent altogether. He responded that she was more beautiful than any species in this world, and that her beauty was incomparable to anything. She felt so awkward that it can't even be described in words. Such compliments are already excessive, and if they were neutral, it could still be understood. But he is already crossing all boundaries. The girl looks at him with huge eyes, does not understand what he wanted to say or hint at, but she doesn't like it anymore. What's most annoying is that he looks at her with a smile, as if nothing had happened, as if they were a couple and there was nothing wrong with it. Then he repeated this phrase again, and she became even more nervous because something was clearly wrong here. She doesn't understand how to understand this. They have only one question in their thoughts. Will the prince of one country really be open to flirting with the future duchess? One might think that the awkward situation would somehow calm down, but everything is just beginning. He also told her that if he could, he would lock her in the castello and would like her gaze to be directed only at him. Just imagine what would have happened if at that moment the Duke had happened to be somewhere nearby and heard these compliments. And then the guy says that if he does what he wants, the Duke will probably be angry with him and even asks her what she thinks about it. You can tell from her reaction that everything is very clear. The girl still doesn't understand how he can allow himself to do this, knowing that these two are actually getting married soon. It's as if he's trying to take the bride for himself before she gets married and it's too late. And so that he understands for sure that they are not on the same path. She said that she is a person who already has a lover and just left. The guy apparently decided to fix the situation in case she complained about him to the Duke. He says that it was all a joke, and would he, the prince, really lust after the future duchess? He even said that she doesn't understand jokes and takes everything seriously, although the way he behaved with her didn't seem like a joke. Moreover, normal people don't joke about flirting with someone, holding hands and all that stuff. After that, he offered to take her to the end. She agreed, but inside she considered him an abnormal person. Sylvia can't imagine what could have pleased such a person so much about her that his eyes lit up as if the most beautiful girl in the world was in front of him. When they had already approached the Duke's castle, it was time to say goodbye. He took her hand, kissed it, and she advised him to be careful because you never know who might see it and how they would perceive it, although it would probably only play into his hands. The lady waited until he left, and then it turned out that the guy stayed to follow her. She learns from her mistakes because she already knows him a little, or rather, what to expect from him. She made sure that he was no longer on the horizon, went into the house and began to complain about how she still felt uncomfortable with his touch and everything he told her. She literally wants to wash off all these traces of his hands because if she doesn't, she will itch for a very long time. She is so pleased that he was too persistent that she is ready to do anything, just to constantly hide from him and avoid any meetings. He looked at her as if she were some kind of prey for him, which he would pursue no matter what. But in Ardal, you can't even imagine a man looking at a woman like that, especially one who was about to marry someone else. It was all so exhausting that she didn't even have the strength to think about anything, and she was already falling off her feet. She is irritated even by the fact that there are a lot of steps here. She even fell on them on purpose to rest. And why did I immediately feel that the carpet was somehow very velvety? It was so soft that I wanted to fall asleep on it. So she lay there for a couple of minutes and then someone came up to her. And judging by her shoes, it was clearly not one of the servants. The girl raises her head and realizes that it is the Duke, who is unhappy that his future wife allows herself to lie on the floor. She says that it is very difficult for her and suggests replacing this ladder with another one because this one seems to have no end. And he asks if she is really so weak that she cannot do something basic, like climb up the ladder. After that, she said that it wasn't just that she was tired. She had to go to the Castello twice, once with that creepy prince. The guy asks why she calls that person that, and she says that when she found the carriage, he was standing there. And in general, it's the first time she sees that the princes have nothing to do, especially in the evening. He didn't react to this in any way. He just asked if she was going to lie there for a long time or not, because when he looks at her, he feels ashamed of her. In the end, he didn't wait for words from her. He just lifted her up with one hand and started dragging her along, because she herself would have to get to the room by tomorrow. It was a bit rough, but Sylvia knows that if it weren't for him, she would have been lying here for a long time. When she started saying that he was being too hard on her, he asked her not to complain because if something was wrong, he could leave her here, right on the floor, just like she liked. It sounded like a joke, but he certainly wasn't joking, and if she had grumbled too much, he would have done the same to her. And in the meantime, the girl noticed that there was someone walking ahead, but the Duke didn't understand. And so what? The maid, who also noticed them, could not restrain herself and asked where it was seen that a man was so unceremoniously dragging his beloved woman along with him. As soon as he heard this, he immediately took the girl in his arms and didn't say a word about how it was none of her business and who she was to teach him. At this point, the assistant felt ashamed that she had made a remark when she was not asked about it. So she apologized and promised that it would not happen again. And then the lady whispered to him that he had changed his position very quickly, and he asked how it was that she didn't have the strength to walk, but she apparently had the strength to talk. And she had an answer to that too, that in fact legs and mouth are different parts of the body, and to talk, you don't need much strength. Meanwhile, Sylvia asked how the conversation with the king went, to which he replied that everything went so-so, it could have been better. Why did she ask if he agreed that she had done well when the king doubted? She showed what a seasoned swindler is and thinks that her agility is simply insane. And she did everything she could, so if the king doubted again, it would be the Duke's problem. He only smiled slightly at this, thinking that the girl wouldn't notice. But she saw everything, and even said out loud that she finally saw that expression on his face. The guy asked her not to talk nonsense. He doesn't like to discuss his emotions and wants her to remember that. Meanwhile, he finally took her to the room. He is already resting heavily. And meanwhile, the Duke's working day is not even half over. For we went, sir. The maid decided to come to him that there was something to talk about because it seems to her that this should be more important to him than work. Namely, that during bathing, she and her colleagues discovered traces of beatings on the lady's body. She reports this because if they found out about it, then he should know too. He said briefly that he understood everything and asked her to leave. It sounded a little rude, but everyone was used to it and the woman did not expect anything better. The guy somehow remembered his past, or rather his childhood, which he often remembers anyway, but now the memories appeared on their own. He himself did not understand what had just happened, but in the end he decided to check everything out, because all his life he had been against someone, killing someone, and remaining unpunished. Now it's hard for him to think about anything else. He became interested in how much Sylvia is hiding from him, which means that she is not as indifferent to him as he shows it to be. Even though they have a contract marriage, he still wants to help her as a human being, and he will do just that the very next day. Meanwhile, the girl thinks that she wakes up in the middle of the night. She felt something wet and warm, opened her eyes, and what was her surprise when she realized that she was not in bed, but in the bathroom. She was very scared, splashed water with foam everywhere, because she doesn't remember waking up and going swimming, and the mere thought that she was brought here without permission and without clothes makes her want to fall through the air. She loudly asks why she is here, to which the grief begins to answer that she was so tired yesterday that she fell asleep without taking a bath. Sylvia literally jumped out of there because she doesn't understand how you can put a person in water without even waking him up. The assistant says that they haven't done everything yet, but the girl asked not to bother her anymore because she already smells like flowers. She refused any help because, at the very least, she had not slept enough and would like to lie in bed for a while. The assistant reminded that the lady had a scheduled breakfast with his lordship, so she advised her to make the right choice because she would always have time to rest. It was better not to upset the person. Sylvia decided that she had to go because since her beloved master was waiting for her, it would be wrong to ignore him. Moreover, every time he calls her like that, it means that he has a serious conversation. So she was already collected in a couple of minutes and tried not to make him wait for a minute. There was already a lot of food on the table. It is very difficult for her to look at both the table and him because today's meat simply enchants her at first sight. At the same time, the girl does not notice that due to fatigue, she begins to fall asleep right at the table. She has not even managed to eat the first piece that she has already cut off. She began to tilt her head and her body was already weakening with every second. If only she could see herself from the outside. From the outside, it looks very cute and a little funny, but when she wakes up, she will probably think that this is a real disgrace. Even the Duke smiles sweetly and doesn't react to it as if it's some kind of disrespect to him or something like that. In the end, he ate himself, then he didn't wait for her to wake up. He went up to her and once again made her feel embarrassed. She hasn't felt so awkward in a long time. She says that she managed to eat well, although he saw that she didn't eat a single bite. The guy says that if she wants to sleep so much, then she can go upstairs and rest, and he will bring dinner to her room every time, and she will eat a portion whenever she wants. To which the girl replied that she no longer wanted to sleep, and instead asked permission to inspect the Baha. Sylvia reminded him, just in case, that he had not allowed her to do this before, and had constantly stopped her, to which he replied that it was so that she would not meet someone who knew his identity. And after that, he asked if she had any acquaintances in Baja, and what she said was that there were none, and if she understood him correctly, then it turns out that now she can go wherever she wants. It is also important for him to know how well she knows the roads of this village to go anywhere, but she says that she doesn't really. Sylvia had asked in advance if this meant he would follow her, and he asked if she really thought he had nothing better to do than pursue her. The guy says that this is a pointless conversation because if he gave her permission to do something, then there is no need to ask her several more times how serious it was because he never jokes with her. She finally managed to go for a walk a little further than the castle grounds, but everything would have been much better if it weren't for Fernando, who would be looking after her. Now it's clear what the catch was. She even asked him to follow her, but not so close, and he still didn't understand how he could interfere with her. He explains that he is only here for her safety and does not understand that she does not like it, because if there is some situation where help is needed, she will be grateful later. He also says that everyone is so brave and strong in words, but when it comes to danger, they always call him. In the end, she had no choice. She had to accept that she would not be alone, although she tried very hard to hint that she could cope without him. After some time, he even started walking literally a meter away from her, started telling her that this market is one of the noisiest and there are a lot of hooligans here. And the peculiarity of these people is that it is impossible to assume from their appearance that they are doing something bad, which is why his presence is literally necessary. Because you can find yourself in a trap very unexpectedly, and hooligans act very quickly and professionally. At some point, they passed by a child who has been standing here all day, asking passers-by for help. He looked at the lady with sad eyes and asked her to help with anything, and she looked into his cap and saw that many were ignoring him because there was only one coin in it that you couldn't buy anything with. The boy literally begs for a little kindness because otherwise he simply won't have anything to eat. At such an age, he is not accepted for work, so the only way to survive is to ask for help on the street. Naturally, Sylvia did not refuse and helped with a huge amount of bread, which will definitely be enough for at least several days. And not only for one person, he will be able to treat his friends or relatives with this. He thanked her for her help and said that he would never forget her kindness. And she asked why he wasn't eating the bread now, since she wasn't taking it away. To which he replied that he wanted to enjoy this pastry with his family. And she decided to persuade him to have a snack, because she can buy something for her family too, so no one will go hungry. The girl had never thought before that helping people could be so pleasant. She felt that she had done a good deed and her soul felt incredibly happy. Finally, she asked him to extend his hand to give him some money. It seems to her that these 10 silver coins are enough for a decent income, even in the capital. And also, just in case he ever had a bad day or ran out of food, Sylvia warned him that if he wanted, he could come to the Duke's castle. A special person would throw him bread through the window. The boy apparently didn't think that he would be like this today. Luck smiled on him, and he hadn't had that for a long time. After she had already said goodbye to him and wanted to leave, the boy asked who she was. She replied that if the castle came, he would find out. But now it was time for her. The child thanked her again for her attention and help. He will remember this day for a very long time because she was the first who sincerely wanted to help him. And then the assistant asked why the lady didn't give him much more money since she had such an opportunity, to which she tells him that she did so for a reason, because if she had given him a lot, he would have given it to someone who looks after him, for example, his older brother or parents. It seems to her that if she gives him a little bit every time, he will spend it on what he wants. Moreover, in this area, it is very dangerous to give a child a lot of money. Someone might see it, that someone will definitely steal the money, and the boy will then be afraid to take even a couple of coins with him. The guy didn't think she had thought everything through in advance, and the girl explains that these are basic rules that everyone should know. She also noticed that during all this time that they had been walking here, she had not seen or heard anything bad. She already likes this city, and if she didn't know that the scammers here pretend to be ordinary, polite people, she would be much calmer, but it's not bad this way either. After some time, Sylvia suddenly decided to go to another alley, and so abruptly as if it was not just like that. The assistant didn't understand why she was drawn there, as if by a magnet, and she, as luck would have it, didn't explain anything to him. It turns out that she saw a familiar person whom she doesn't want to approach, and even more so, she doesn't want him to notice her, which is why she suddenly needed to leave here. This man turned out to be that very prince. She regretted that she had not run away before he looked at her, and now she doesn't know where to run away from him. Considering the last meeting, he won't leave her alone so easily, although perhaps the presence of an assistant will help her somehow, and the prince won't be so persistent. The guy is literally glowing from the fact that he was lucky enough to meet her, and it also doesn't seem to bother him that it's not mutual, and you can clearly see it in the girl. She would really like to talk to him straight now, as it is, to say everything she thinks. But she has taken etiquette lessons and cannot ruin her reputation in a couple of minutes because of this man. He does not deserve it. If the Duke finds out that after all the effort and time she spent on her training, there is no result, he will make her go through it all over again. When he said he was glad to see her again, she almost threw up because she immediately remembered his behavior that had pushed her away once and for all. She doesn't understand how he finds her so easily in such a big city. It's more like he's just following her. The assistant thought it was time to introduce himself and get acquainted. He said that he was a knight of the Duke of Miramonte. His name was Fernando, and it was a great honor for him to meet Prince Actor, the owner of the Cincia Palace. The prince also said that he was very glad to meet you and smiled again in such a way that Sylvia wanted to run away from him. She never thought that an ordinary guy could make her so angry with his mere presence. Suddenly, the prince says that he noticed something on Fernando's head. And just as the guy was starting to check what could be there, he lost his vigilance, and at that moment, the prince hit him with all his might, right in the face. Sylvia couldn't believe her eyes at first. After this, the prince wouldn't have a single chance for her to treat him well, because this was too much. She is not going to tolerate this. Asks him what he allows himself to do, and what this man did to him, to which he simply calmly asked whether she had had dinner or not. The girl approached the assistant to help him up, to support him somehow, and at that moment asked if the prince understood what consequences awaited him now, because she was not going to keep silent about it, and Fernando even more so. As if nothing had happened, the guy says that it would be nice if she had dinner with him while still trying to take her hand, which angers her even more. She wants to understand why after this situation he speaks so easily during some dinner, as if he had just pushed not a person, but some trash from under his feet. He grabbed her hand even more tightly and began to drag her along, but she didn't even have the strength to resist. Apparently, that was the plan. He neutralized Fernando and understands that she herself will not do anything against him. The only thing left for her to say is that she has already had dinner and another portion will not fit in her. When he didn't react to this, she realized that she needed to start manipulating. She says that if she doesn't return to the Duke's castle right now, he will worry and use all his powers to find her. And if he sees them together, he will be in trouble. He easily passed over all this information, after which he said that he heard that she was originally from Ardell, so he suggests trying the local food. She is very irritated that he ignores all her words. A little more, and the girl will no longer restrain herself like that. Unfortunately, there is no other way now except to obediently follow this madman, because the more she resists, the more he will ignore her words. She mentally hopes that Fernanda will finally come to his senses and call the Duke for help, but for now he is not in a state to think about it. Several times during this time she tried to break away from him, but he watches her so closely that he doesn't give her a single chance. And he also looks at her as if it is he who is upset by her behavior, and not her. He really is some kind of madman. At some point he realized that she was probably in pain. He started making excuses, saying that he had a little poor control over his strength and promised that this would not happen again. She thought at that moment that if he called such strong compressions a little poorly control the force, then he really has problems, because her hand hurts as if it was crushed by something heavy. At that moment she wants only one thing, to become the same strong person and squeeze his hand in the same way, so that he would understand for at least a second what it was like for her just now, all this time, while he did not understand it. Here they are already sitting at the table. He is happy, but you can't tell that from her, and it's absolutely not surprising. Sylvia often mentions her fiancé in case he realizes how far he's gone, but the guy really doesn't understand why she talks about him so much. He perceives this name as if he is her fiancé, and she constantly talks about another person. The next time she wanted to hint to him about something, he says that the food will get cold, so he advises her to eat faster, and they will always have time to talk. The lady was once again convinced that her words meant nothing to him, so perhaps she would have to act not in words, but in deeds. He is very lucky that she tolerates him, because if she had not had so much patience, the Duke would have found out about everything long ago. But now she simply feels sorry for him. She still hasn't touched her food. She only drinks water all the time. He noticed this and asked what was wrong. Sylvia explained that she had actually eaten steak with the Duke for lunch, so she had no particular desire to eat the same thing again. After that, he simply threw the plate to the side, and with such force that she got scared, she thought that he would throw it right at her. The girl tries hard to look casual, although inside she has a storm of emotions that is about to come out. After this, the guy asked the assistant to bring other food, and was also indignant that the servant took so long to approach him. Although literally a couple of minutes had passed, and it didn't matter to him that the person might have been busy or was far away, that he simply physically couldn't have come faster. After some time she was served a new dish. It looked so appetizing that she really wanted to try it. After all, this is at least something good that has happened recently. The girl was calmly eating her food and didn't notice how the Duke was already approaching this table, which means that something interesting is about to happen. He probably wants to hear what's going on here, because she didn't warn him that she was going to have a get-together with anyone. On the one hand, she is very happy to see him, but on the other hand, you never know what mood he came in and how it will all end, especially considering how he is now looking at the prince. The Duke apparently understood everything. He simply took his bride by the hand, asked her to say goodbye to the prince, and asked him to stop these jokes. One would think that the guy would apologize and say that it was some kind of misunderstanding, but he allowed himself to get up from his seat, and even asked the Duke to let his own bride go, when it sounded very bold. Usually after such words there is, well, or at least a showdown. It didn't end there. The Duke didn't even have time to answer. The guy was already asking if he understood correctly that Sylvia was not his wife yet, so the girl had the right to have lunch and dinner with anyone, whether he liked it or not. It is clear that the Duke is now holding back very strongly. He is clenching his fists, which are just asking to touch the face of this man who allows himself too much. He asks in a calm voice not to test his patience, because if it runs out, someone will be in great trouble. After that, he asked the girl to follow him and advised the guy to stay put. Otherwise, if he moved even one step, he would regret it greatly. Surprisingly, the prince listened to him, didn't even answer. Apparently, he understood that there was no time for jokes here. He just waved to the girl with an expression on his face as if they had just had a nice chat. And she is very glad that it is all finally over, because she simply would not have lasted until the end. Sylvia is already on the street with the Duke. She understands that she needs to talk to him somehow so that he understands everything correctly. She tugged lightly at his jacket. He didn't notice it at first, so she repeated it, and this time he felt it. The guy asks what she wants, and she explains that she just wants to know how he knew she was there. He replied to this that this is the autonomy of Miramonte. There is no reason why he could not find it here, wherever it is. After that, the girl asked if he was angry with her because she felt like he was hiding something from her and didn't want to talk about it. He stopped and asked why he should be angry with her, and she suggested, for example, because she didn't go home, but dined with the prince without permission. To this he said that the strength of the prince's grip was comparable to the Patante tribe. So if the prince was acting head-on, she would not be able to stop him, which meant that he immediately understood that all this was only at his request and she could not resist. The girl was very confused that he called that very time of giants from the kingdom of Bellium, who are as tall as a tree. And then she says that if he wants, she can show him the marks that she got because of the prince when he dragged her along with him. Next time she won't tolerate it anymore. If something like this happens again, she will refuse to go outside at all. The guy looked at these tracks very carefully. He didn't think that everything was so bad, and he also thought about that if people see this, they will think that her fiancé did this to her, and they don't need such rumors, so something needs to be done about it. The guy promised that he would try to think of something. He also felt bad that because of him, the girl was suffering and could not be calm without him. And in order for all these marks to disappear, he began to press on her hand. Although it seemed that this would only make it worse, she began to worry that it was painful, and he asked her to be patient for a little while, because otherwise they could not be removed. Then he hit her a little, but it was only for her own good, so the girl forgave him and didn't scream too much. She held on as best she could, and then looked at her hand and saw that there were no bruises left, just as he had promised. For her, it's real magic. She doesn't understand how it works. He literally made everything disappear with just one press and a light blow. It took him a few seconds. It's really impressive. Then he said that he simply hid the bruises visually. But this does not mean that they disappeared completely, although in fact, she is also happy with this. Then he asked if she had any other bruises, to which she replied that she didn't seem to have any, or that she just didn't notice them. After that, they started talking about how easy and simple it was for him to speak politely to a prince who didn't deserve it. It wouldn't hurt her to learn that. Sylvia assumed that he probably behaved this way with him because they had known each other since childhood. To which he said that she was indeed fearless, and he said it with such a smile as if she had touched on a difficult topic for him without realizing it. He also says that even after facing his cruelty, she was not afraid, and even he is impressed by this. The girl asks what she is afraid of. She did nothing bad, and no matter who that person was, he has no reason to harm her, especially since she knows that he likes her, and that is probably why she felt calm in this regard. The guy said that he generally has poor impulse control, and he also avoids people, and usually doesn't leave his palace. So today's incident is a bit surprising. He advised her to be careful because even His Majesty cannot restrain the prince's impulsiveness. He wants her to take these words as seriously as possible, because next time he might not be around, and the situation might turn out in a variety of ways. Meanwhile, Sylvia remembered about Fernando. She came to visit him. The girl didn't even have time to ask how he was feeling, because everything was already visible on him. The assistant immediately began to apologize for not being able to protect her. For being inattentive, he was very ashamed of this whole situation, and that now in her eyes he is not as strong and reliable as he was before. Sylvia understands that he most likely does not know all the nuances in this situation, because even the Duke would have difficulty dealing with that man, so he definitely should not blame himself. She asks him to calm down, but at the same time she understands how unpleasant it is for him. He is still a man who has slightly disgraced himself, but in this case it is not so. She told him that it was very difficult to imagine a person who could resist the prince. So instead of being ashamed, he needed to come up with a plan to teach the impudent man a lesson, because he could not be defeated by force. The next day, in honor of the Duke's return to the capital, a ball is held in the palace, and it is time to choose a dress and do a hairstyle. A lot of people are involved in this, so the result will most likely be amazing. The girl says that the one in the middle seems the most beautiful to her, but for some reason, the assistant asked her to name another option. Oh, what's her mom? Then make up on. Then she explained that this is the same dress that the girl will wear to the royal ball. She must try on at least 10 dresses because from the outside they may seem beautiful, but in reality they will look better, which the lady did not even pay attention to. She says this exclusively from her experience. The assistant also said that the girl came from the south, so perhaps she is not used to such large events. And since his lordship will be present there, the gentleman must match his level as his bride. Sylvia took it as if her assistant was hinting that she was constantly disgracing the Duke and that something needed to be done about it, especially when it came to such important events.